This video is brought to you by PCBWay, who supplied the circuit boards for this project. More about them later. Hi, today we're going to be talking about tool-assisted speedrun replay devices, and more specifically the TAZ-TM32 project that I've been involved with over the past couple of years. But what are replay devices? Well, you'll certainly have heard of speedrunning, which involves completing video games as quickly as possible for competitive purposes or just simple fun. Speedruns are of course typically performed by human players, but a separate category called Tool-Assisted Speedruns, or TAZs, utilise a computer to automatically play the game in a far more precise manner. Many people's first reaction might be to consider that pointless or worse, cheating, but the artistry and sophistication of many TAZs often makes them every bit as exciting to watch as human speedruns. Speedruns are performed on virtually every gaming platform, and TAZs are no exception. But whereas PC games like Doom and Quake had their own speedrun recording functions, games running on home consoles like the Nintendo Entertainment System and Sega Genesis almost never had such features, let alone tools for creating assisted runs. And so, the standard way to play tool-assisted runs on home consoles was to use modified emulators running on computers. However, TAZ replay devices, like the TAZ-TM32 that is the subject of today's video, are designed to allow TAZs to be played back on real original consoles. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into the TAZ-TM32, let's consider the reasons why we might want to run a TAZ on a real console. You see, while TAZs are impressive to watch running on an emulator, seeing truly inhuman standards of play on real consoles is a mind-blowing experience, particularly really advanced TAZs that involve insane glitches or even arbitrary code execution. You'll no doubt have seen the segments at speedrunning events where TAZBot, Tool-Assisted Speedrunning's unofficial mascot, completely destroys games to the delight of millions of people. But any retro gamer will get a lot of entertainment out of running TAZs on their consoles. And so the main reason I got into the replay device scene in the first place was to lower the barrier of entry so that anyone could enjoy this extremely rewarding hobby. But we'll delve deeper into that stuff later. For now, let's take a look at replay device hardware itself. This is the device we're going to be using, the TAZ-TM32. It was mostly developed by Onosaurus and myself, but builds upon the work of many other people, including True, Jakku, Micro500, Total, SoulCal, and Ghost Sonic. I'll give you a link below to an article detailing the full history of replay devices. TAZ-TM32 is designed to be super easy to use. Just connect it to the console's controller port, pick a TAZ from the on-screen menu, then sit back and enjoy the fun. It supports NES, SNES, N64, and GameCube out of the box, and with a little hacking it can be made to work with Genesis too. We provide a few example runs in our test suite, which is designed to verify that your setup is working properly, as well as being an entertaining showcase of the kinds of things that TAZ-TM32 is capable of. So all we have to do is unzip the test suite to a USB stick and then just insert it into the TAZ-TM32. Then we connect the TAZ-TM32 up to an NES or SNES. Now if we power up the console, you see that the screen lights up and gives a listing of all the runs on the USB stick. We'll start with a nice short run. For NES we'll pick SMB Warps, or for SNES we'll pick SMW Warps, but it's crucial not to start the run yet. First you want to hold down the reset button on the console, then press the play button on the device, then release the reset button. This will start your console in exact synchronization with the run. If all goes to plan, you should witness some truly spectacular TAZing from Happy Lee or Bruno Visnadi, incorporating over 3 decades of game research. Now we've got that working, we can try some other games. The test suite includes Adelicat's legendary Gradius run that so unfortunately desynced during the TAZBot block at AGDQ 2014. But now you can watch it in all its glory on your own hardware, and it really is a sight to behold, not least for the sheer audacity of TAZing an auto-scrolling game. Let's go even deeper down the rabbit hole. If you follow speedrunning, you'll have no doubt seen top runners perform arbitrary code execution glitches to complete Super Mario World in under a minute. Well, with the use of a replay device, we can take that to a whole new level. You see, the same glitches can be exploited to load entirely new code into the console just by pressing buttons very quickly, as famously demonstrated at AGDQ 2014, when TAZBot programmed the games Snake and Pong into an unmodified SNES running Super Mario World. Well, now you can watch that legendary run created by MasterJune on your own console. It's included in the test suite under the name SMW Total Control, and you start it the same way as the Warps run we talked about earlier. Feel free to unplug TAZ-TM32 and play the games yourself. But NES users shouldn't feel left out. There's also an ace run for Super Mario Bros. 3, and it's even more nuts. Made by Lord Tom, it was first shown off at AGDQ 2016, and is equal parts hilarious and mind-blowing. Again, feel free to take over and mess with Mario Bros. 3 in an extremely weird state. But arguably, these aren't even the most impressive ace runs in the test suite. There are two runs called SMB3 Mono PCM and SMW Stereo PCM that allow you to blast digital audio over both controller ports and have it come out of the NES or SNES sound chips. There are pre-made audio files under the names SMB3 Mono Tune and SMW Stereo Tune, and you can make your own audio using the scripts in the TazTM32 GitHub. The last ace run in the test suite is by P4Plus2 and is probably my favourite. It's called SMW SMB, and as the name suggests, it programs an entire copy of the original NES Super Mario Bros. Inside the SNES Super Mario world. It's fully playable and even has the music from the SNES Super Mario All-Stars version. If you want to see legendary speedrunner Cosmic running this version, then I'll give you a link below. It's a really cool video. Now, before we go even further down the rabbit hole of Taz replay devices, you might be wondering how you can get hold of a TazTM32, short of building one yourself from the source documents on GitHub. Well, Onosaurus has a few left for sale in his online store, but quantities are limited and it might be a while before we get round to having another batch made. Luckily, however, my sponsor PCBWay will happily build you one, including the 3D printed case. I've uploaded all the design files to their shared projects section, so ordering one is super simple. I'll give you a link in the video description. PCBWay have provided circuit boards for all my projects for over 3 years now, and I've been using them since before I was even sponsored by them. If you need some boards manufactured, then I can highly recommend them. They do great work. New users get $5 off their first order, and as a batch of 5 boards is only $5, you basically get them for the postage cost. Their assembly services are extremely reasonably priced at $30 for up to 20 boards, and they also offer 3D printing, CNC machining, and injection molding services. If any of that sounds useful to you, then head over to PCBWay's website. There's a link in the video description. As well as the TazTM32 board and case, you'll also need to grab one of these 128x64 I2C OLED screens from somewhere like eBay or AliExpress. But make sure it's one where the pinout goes VCC or VDD, then ground, then SCK, then SDA. There's a lot on the market that go ground, VCC, SCK, SDA, so don't use any of those or you'll fry them. Finally, you'll need some 10mm M2 standoffs and bolts to hold the screen in place. The only other thing you'll need is controller cables, and traditionally people would hack a controller extension cable to have an RJ45 end. But if that sounds a bit janky to you, recently I've designed some controller adapters that are far more convenient. But you'll have to assemble those yourself, and the controller connectors can be tricky to source. Alternatively, you can just buy them from me. I'm in the middle of setting up an online store, so check the video description for more details. Anyway, back to the video. Once you're bored of the test suite, you'll naturally want to find runs for other games. The TazBot website documents hundreds of hardware-verified runs, but at the moment there aren't many ready-made replay files. Expect that to change soon though. TazBot community leader Dwango AC has an archive of ready-made replay files in his GitHub, although it's getting quite old at the time of speaking. Alosha Taz's GitHub has some more recent ones. I'll give you a link to some other ones in the video description. Apart from that, the main repository of runs is the legendary TazVideos.org, founded by the even more legendary Biscuit, but unfortunately most of these runs haven't been console verified and will need to be converted to work on a replay device. The conversion process isn't very straightforward, but I'll try to give you a brief summary. It involves playing the Taz through an emulator while having the emulator log the controller inputs to a file. This is necessary because many games behave in an unpredictable but repeatable manner, and things like repeated frames and glitchy polling patterns have to be accounted for. Even when you manage to get a run converted, it might still require manual editing or command line tweaks to sync correctly. Check out the wiki in the TazTM32 GitHub for more information and some examples in the test suite. I know all that sounds a bit vague just now, but there's hope on the horizon. Big Bass and VI Gray have been working on a standardized Taz container format that will provide a much easier method to create and share runs intended for replay devices. Big Bass has already integrated it into his Veritas device that has been used to verify tons of NES games, and we're currently working on getting it integrated into TazTM32, so there should soon be many more runs available in a universal ready-to-play format. And unfortunately, some runs just won't sync no matter how hard you try. This is because hardware is inherently non-deterministic. Disc-based consoles like the GameCube are notorious for this, as the disc spins at a slightly different speed each time it is loaded, but even cartridge-based systems can suffer from non-determinism caused by a number of external factors. In fact, Onosaurus found that he could only get the Donkey Kong Country any% run to sync after he'd left his SNES in the fridge for half an hour. For advanced users who want to experiment with creating their own runs, you can connect the TAS-TM32 to a computer and operate it from the command line. You'll need to install Python as well as grab the TAS-TM32 source from GitHub, but example command lines are provided with the test suite to get you started. A flash cart such as the FXPack Pro is also really useful here, as you can write scripts to automatically load ROMs and reset the console without having to reach over to your console each time. You can do all kinds of crazy things with this setup. I can't even begin to scratch the surface of what's possible, but I'll show you a few things that have been developed over the years. Remember the streaming audio example from earlier? Well, instead of playing pre-recorded audio, you can stream audio live from any source you like. In this example, I'm playing from an internet radio station. In fact, Dwango AC uses this exact setup for background music in his live streams. Pretty cool, huh? The next example comes from the secret Taz block that Practical Taz, KingCurb64, Onosaurus and myself did at TazGiving 2020. I mentioned earlier about difficulties with syncing disc-based consoles. Well, when we were trying to get Practical Taz's Super Smash Bros. Melee runs to sync, KingCurb64 had the genius idea of using the controller rumble that happens when certain characters hit the ground after the stage loads. By logging the exact time the rumble happens, we were able to sync the rest of the run to that. Unfortunately, this only happens on certain combinations of character and stage, but it was enough to allow us to do a lovely showcase of various tricks that Practical Taz set up. Another thing we showed at TazGiving was what I suppose you could call Twitch Plays Smash Bros. Name entry. By connecting TAS-TM32 up to the Twitch chat for the stream, viewers were able to very slowly enter lines of chat live into the Smash Bros. Name entry screen. It was a little impractical to say the least, but I thought it was fun. For my next example, we'll look at what we had to do to get another of Practical Taz's amazing Melee runs to sync. It's for the character Shake in the Break the Target stage of the PAL version of the game, and it completes it in 5.43 seconds. Unfortunately, the run requires the random number generator in the game to be set to a very specific seed value to be able to do this, and the GameCube random seed is decided when the console first boots. But building upon work by Save State, you can actually figure out which seed value you have by going to VS mode and picking 9 random characters, then brute forcing the random algorithm to find out where in the sequence you are. If you're close enough, you can just keep picking more random characters until you get to the correct seed value, and if you're not close enough, you can just keep resetting the console until you get better luck. So we hooked the composite output of the GameCube up to a USB capture card, wrote some simple software to detect what random characters we were getting, then left it running for a while as it went through a few reboot cycles. Once the seed had been confirmed, we ran the Taz, and it synced perfectly. Finally, if you haven't already seen it, I highly recommend you watch the Ocarina of Time Taz from last year's GDQ by Dwango AC, Save State and Soren, which involved a combination of live play and replay device, and ranks as not just one of the most impressive tool-assisted speedruns of all time, but in my opinion as one of the coolest things ever shown at a GDQ event. I don't want to spoil it, but I'll give you a link to the video below. So, I suppose that's about it for this introduction to playing tool-assisted speedruns on real consoles, but there's far more to this topic than I can possibly cover in a short video, so check the video description for links to more information and resources. If you have any questions, just stick them in a comment and I'll maybe do a follow-up video with some more details. By the way, I'm going to be at the European Speedrunner Assembly in Malmo on Saturday the 29th of July, helping Dwango AC out with the TazBot showcase. We've got a lot of great content to show, so don't forget to tune into the live stream. And if you're attending ESA yourself, then by all means come and say hi. Being Scottish, I will probably be in the bar. But until then, thanks very much for watching. If you liked the video, do the whole like, subscribe thing, and catch you next time.